In this lesson, we're going to learn how to create a sparkle flourish. That's something that we'll use over and over and is very helpful just to add a little bit more interest in animation lulls, okay? I went ahead and created for us a little animation of text animating on simply by using the scale attribute and an overshoot. And then I created a box flourish with the same tools that we learned last lesson. Okay? And so when we do text like this in an explainer video, it's kind of boring for the second half. There's not much else happening. It's just a word on a screen. So there's a couple other things that we can do, and that includes adding a little sparkle flourish is what I call it. So let's create a new shape layer by deselecting everything, and let's use the pen tool. Let's go to a point in time where we have kind of an idea of where our word is going to be. And let's just add a little sparkle flourish to the end of this down here. Okay, so now we have one line. Let's deselect that by clicking the layer. So now that we've made that line, if we kept clicking, we would just keep making a shape, so we need to deselect that. And we can keep using this one shape layer to animate multiple lines. And I'll show you how to do that. So let's make another one here, maybe at another kind of an angle. And then we'll click the layer again. And let's come off at another angle. None of these being right angles, so it's a little more star shaped. Okay, I'm going to name this real quick. Okay, so now we have our three lines. I'm just going to turn off the box one for a second so we can focus on this. So let's scroll down into the layer, the sparkle flourish layer. It looks the same as the last lesson, and now we have three shapes. So let's go to one of the shapes, select it, and then click Add Trim Paths. Okay, so now it puts it inside that shape. If we were at the top level and we did Contents and we did Trim Paths, it's going to add it outside of these three shapes. So it's going to control all of them. And that's not what we want to have happen. We want to be able to control these independently. So we can delete that and make sure that we have these clicked when we're adding the Trim Paths attribute. So we'll click Shape 2 and we'll do the same thing. Trim Paths. So now we can see it's added in here. Shape number 1, add, Trim Paths. Okay, so now we see that it's in each one of these. Okay, great. So I'm gonna scroll this back down and we'll get started on the first one. Let's go into the Trim Paths. Let's find a point in time when we want it to start. Let's just say in the middle here. We can move the animation around later. Let's get this down to 0 and set keyframes. Okay, let's also make this stroke have a round cap. So now we're at 0, 0. We need to animate this on, and sparkles are pretty quick. So we don't want this on the screen too long. I'm just going to go ahead and animate this all the way off. So nothing's going to happen because it's staying the same throughout. The start and end is going to be the same, but as soon as we offset this a little bit, we're going to see it, okay? That's the easiest way to do it. Another way is to kind of make these uneven. Right now they're the same amount of time. If we did one that's a little shorter or longer than the other, it'll help have a longer section than a shorter section. And basically what we're looking for when we do these is that the end gets a little more chance to go on and off. So let's have now we have our first sparkle ray of the sparkle, okay? We could easy ease this if we wanted. It's not going to do a lot because there's not many frames in between them. So there's not that big of a difference. And let's just make sure that all of these are maybe a little smaller to contrast with the other thickness around. So the nice thing about this, we can copy these and paste them in the other shapes. I need to make sure to remember to make these round caps as well. So now we have the same animation for all three. And we could totally leave it like that. That's fine, but I think it's a little more interesting when in animation when things don't all happen at the same time, okay? Let's see which one. This is the one on the bottom. This is the one on the left. And so let's have this one kind of last a little longer, the one in the middle. Let's offset this. So now if they're not happening all at the same time, you know, it's a little more interesting. So the great thing about this, same as the last time, we can duplicate this layer out, especially since we have all of the shapes in one shape layer, as we've done. That's kind of almost like pre-composing it within a layer. So we don't really have to pre-compose this because it's just one layer. And we haven't done anything to the transform attributes of the actual layer itself. So all these are clean and ready to be animated if we wanted to. Another thing to note is we might want to move the anchor point of this. If we were to animate it, we'd want it closer to the center point of that. So we can click the pan behind tool and get it over there. That way, if, for example, let's duplicate this and put it on the other side as well. And if we're going to do that, we're going to want to rotate it, because if we move it over here, say we want it on the bottom left corner, that doesn't really work. And now that we move the anchor point around, it's easy to just use the rotate, and now it rotates from that anchor point. And again, you know, this is all happening at the same time, so let's offset one keyframe just to make it a little more interesting. Maybe two. So that is a sparkle flourish. Now that we have that, we can copy and paste it in other compositions. We can use it throughout the explainer video, and it'll just help add some visual interest throughout the entire project. So instead of just having text pop on and then just stay there, these flourishes add quite a bit more interest to just having text pop on. Okay, and one final tip that I like to do every once in a while is add a null, and I'll call it global, because I'm going to parent everything but the background to it. And this global null is kind of an interesting way to keep things moving. We could animate the scale and position if we wanted, and just keep things kind of moving throughout the entire thing. Let's scale this back down. And then I'll use easy ease here. So it's just a way to keep everything together using a null now that we have all these flourishes, and we want it all to move together, and we don't have to animate each layer separately. So that's a great way to keep things moving. Even after the flourishes are done, this is still kind of moving, but while the flourishes are on, they're all moving together. So the null, again, is a great option to keep things moving. That's really big in these explainer videos, not to just have text on screen and then just leave it there. We always want to have some type of visual interest, something always happening or about to happen. And so that's where thinking of interesting transitions and then peppering in these flourishes where appropriate. Thanks for watching.